What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. It's time for my updated college football playoff predictions. I didn't do a video last week because I didn't really change anything from week one. There wasn't anything that happened during week one that made me change my predictions around, but there were some things that happened in week two, and really just looking at the big picture, weeks one and week two, that have made me change some things in my predictions. And I'll do these every week from here on out. Even if I don't change anything, I'll try to still do a video because it's fun to do. It's fun to see how the predictions change, and when they don't change, it's nice. It's kind of neat to see how our perception changes. And follow along, do your predictions each week, and see how your predictions change as well. Of course, you can comment down below with your predictions. So my number one seed has changed. I've already made a change right there. Number one, I've got Georgia. So we had Alabama in the preseason. Georgia, to me, now looks like the best team in the country. I believe Georgia will beat Alabama in the SEC championship, and I think that's going to put Georgia as an undefeated number one seed, 13-0. That's where I've got the Bulldogs. Again, both sides of the ball, this is the best team in the country. Things can change. Teams can improve. Alabama might get better. They might get some things fixed. But looking at it right now, I think Georgia's going to be that team. If you thought they were going to drop off this year, I think you were wrong. I think Georgia is definitely going to be in the playoff. I just don't see anyone beating them in the regular season. If they do lose a game, I think it will be in the SEC championship. But I still think they make the playoffs. So I've got them as the number one team. Number two for me is Ohio State. I've still got the Buckeyes here, but I'm starting to lean towards Michigan a little bit in the Big Ten. The one thing that Ohio State has going for them, they have the big game at home, and that might be the difference. So the gap has closed for me, whereas in the preseason, I felt pretty confident in saying that Ohio State would run the table, win the Big Ten, make it to the college football playoff. But now I'm much closer to 50-50 with Ohio State and Michigan. I think putting J.J. McCarthy in as the starter for Michigan and also Iowa. You know, Iowa was the one game we thought Michigan might lose before Ohio State, and yeah, they could lose another game in there somewhere, but now that looks like a pretty easy win, honestly. So I think Michigan's in a great spot to be undefeated when they go into that Ohio State game. But as of right now, I'm still going to pick Ohio State to win that game, and whoever wins that game, I think will win the Big Ten championship and will be the number 2 seed. The loser of that game still has a chance to get in the playoff. If both teams are undefeated there. So that's going to be a huge game, I think, at the end of the season again this year. But I've got the Buckeyes winning it as of right now. You know, some concerns for them. Ohio State and Alabama are two teams that I think we've got some concerns about after the first 2 weeks. But I'm not as concerned about Ohio State. I'll talk about Alabama in a second. But for Ohio State, I'm not as concerned because the defense is playing really well. And that was the big question mark. Of course, they haven't really been tested. Notre Dame, definitely not an explosive offense, and then last week playing a group of 5 teams. So we'll see when they play a better team. But I'm not concerned about the offense because we know what we're going to get. When they get everyone healthy and on the same page, Ohio State will have one of the top offenses in the country. I really have no doubts about that. So that's why I'm not as concerned about the Buckeyes, even though they haven't looked really like the number 2 team in the country so far this season, in my opinion. All right, how about number 3? We've made a change here. Sort of. Well, this team I've had in the playoff, but now I've moved them up to number 3. That's the Miami Hurricanes. Everybody called me crazy in the preseason for saying that Miami could be in the college football playoff, for saying that they could beat Texas A&M. Well, we're going to find out on Saturday, and if they lose to A&M, you can count them out. I don't see them running the table from there. I think they'll lose at least one more game. I think they beat Texas A&M on Saturday, though. I talked about it on the Upset Alert video. I'm not feeling as confident just because Texas A&M coming off of a loss is going to be really fired up for that one, really focused. And that does lean me more towards A&M. But I'm going to stick with my prediction, say that Miami will win that game. They'll lose to Clemson in the regular season, but then turn around and beat them in the ACC championship. And I've got the Hurricanes as the number 3 seed, where they will face Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl. All right, number 4 seed, a new team. First time you've seen them in my playoff predictions, the USC Trojans. Yes, I've got USC winning the Pac-12. I think they'll probably lose a game, maybe to Utah in the regular season, possibly avenge that loss in the Pac-12 championship, just like Miami. And I think, I mean, you look at what they've got on offense. This team is just going to be really, really tough to stop for anyone. And the defense, you know, we haven't really seen them tested, but they've got players. They've got talent. And this looks like a team that I think, when you look at their schedule, who's going to beat them? It's going to take a pretty big upset for them to lose to anyone besides maybe Utah. And I think they win those games, and they will represent the Pac-12 in the college football playoff. I think Miami will get the 3 seed, USC the 4 seed, mostly just because, you know, when you really look at their strength of schedule, I don't think there's a huge difference. But just the perception of the Pac-12, I think, is going to hurt USC a little bit with the committee, and that's going to put them at number 4. So how about the teams that I considered? And again, if you look at my preseason playoff predictions, the only change as far as the 4 teams is USC is in, Alabama is out. But I am still considering Alabama, and I'll talk about the teams. Actually, before we talk about the teams I considered, let's just go ahead and go through my predictions that went out of order a little bit. I do have Georgia beating USC. I don't think that game will be even all that competitive. As good as USC is, you know, we could see a game kind of like that Georgia-Oklahoma game when it was Kirby Smart versus Lincoln Riley, but I think this Georgia team is just better than that Georgia team. USC will score even against a great defense like Georgia, but I think Georgia will win it fairly easily, at least by a couple of touchdowns. And I've got the Bulldogs going to the national championship. Ohio State versus Miami. This will be a good one as well. But I think Ohio State's kind of similar. It's not going to be a close, super close game. Give me Ohio State by a couple of scores. I just don't think Miami and USC are quite ready to win a playoff game, even if they do get there. And then we have Georgia versus Ohio State in the national championship. My original predictions had these two teams facing off in the semifinal. Is Ohio State's defense good enough? Have they improved that much? Well, it's very early and it's hard to say. I think you see a shootout here. 2 really good offenses going at it, but Georgia still has the better defense. The Bulldogs get the win. I'm going to say that Georgia, the team that has looked like the best team so far this year, will win the national championship. Back-to-back national champions. Stetson Bennett getting it done when everyone thought that he should be benched last year. He leads Georgia to another national championship. So that's my prediction right now. Again, I've changed it. I had Alabama in the preseason, but they've got some question marks. Now let's get to those teams that I considered. So these would be the next teams in line if one of these teams ahead of them does fall. I think Michigan would be next in line with that 1 loss coming to Ohio State. Again, that game I think is going to be a playoff semifinal or quarterfinal matchup. I don't see the winner of that game losing to the Big Ten West champion. Michigan could get in, though. Let's say USC loses a couple of games. Michigan could be that number 4 seed. I've got Oklahoma winning the Big 12 and going 11-2. I think that they will win the Big 12 championship, but they'll lose a couple of games in the regular season. Maybe even a game on Saturday to Nebraska, possibly. Could see an upset there. But the 2 losses will keep them out. The Big 12 is very competitive, and getting through all those games undefeated, or even 1 loss, I think is going to be really tough. There's Alabama at 11-2. So I talked about the concerns with Ohio State and Alabama. Not as concerned about Ohio State, but I am concerned about Alabama because that offensive line does not look good right now. At least what we saw against Texas. Maybe we're overreacting. We'll have plenty of time to find out if this is a serious issue or not. But that is an issue that plagued Alabama last year. So that's why I'm concerned. Ohio State's offense was not an issue last year. I don't expect it to be an issue this year. Alabama's offensive line looks like it is going to be an issue. The wide receivers not getting open. They lost their top 2 receivers. What happened when they went out last year? They struggled. So you're seeing an Alabama team, as great as they are, as great as Bryce Young is, as great as Will Anderson is, you're seeing some holes here on this Alabama team that could be major issues for them going forward. Couple of speedy receivers for Alabama that have been injured. When they get them back, perhaps that will change things around. But I'm concerned if I'm an Alabama fan, and it's not just the concerns, it's the schedule. So if this team is a little bit iffy at times, kind of like they were last year, keep in mind they've got to go on the road to face Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU, and Ole Miss. You're telling me that Alabama team that struggled against Texas can go on the road and win all 4 of those games? I'm sorry, I don't see it happening. At least what we saw from this team last week. Again, they might improve. They might get things fixed. I thought that they would get that offensive line fixed. They had all offseason, and I thought Saban would have them ready to go. That's why I thought they were going to win the national championship. But if they struggle there, I see them losing one of those games, and again, losing to Georgia in the SEC championship, so that would keep them out. And then I have Clemson losing a couple of games. I still think someone gets them in the regular season. Maybe not Notre Dame now, but someone, maybe we'll see who, maybe Florida State even potentially. And then I think they lose that game to Miami in the ACC championship. So that's how I've got the playoff right now. Probably going to change it. Miami is, that's a big one on Saturday. Miami, Texas A&M. That is the game that I'm going to be most interested in, because that's the game that's going to affect the playoff race and let us know if Miami is a contender or not. If they lose that game, I don't see them getting in. Then maybe you insert Michigan, or maybe even a 2-loss team. Maybe this is the year that we do see a 2-loss team. Going to be very interesting. Those are my predictions, though. Give me your predictions and your thoughts on my predictions down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.